Back for another edition of In the Huddle. Carl Dukes put them up along with Jason La Canfora and, of course, Brian Baldinger. Guys, we talk nothing but ball on this podcast, NFL football, and it's been a big week because the Combine came and went, and now all these teams are doing their evaluations, and we'll see as we get to free agency and the start of the new league year on March 12th. All right, guys, let's start first with just your interpretations of what came out of last week. You know, we always go into the Combine, it's like, all right, who helped themselves, who didn't, who's really good or what we anticipate to be good, and who's not. Look, we know these guys are running around in shorts, and these are just drills. And these are just one part of the equation in going into drafting one of these players. But, Baldy, I know you spent a couple of days there, and then, Jason, I want to hear from you. What were your interpretations of the Combine this year?
Well, I mean, it is the NFL's version of the winter meetings of baseball. So everybody is there. I mean, you take two steps. I mean, I see Leslie Frazier, and next thing I know, I'm bumping into Mike McDonald, and we're talking about Seattle. Or I'm sitting down talking to a friend at the JW Marriott, and here's Aaron Glenn walking up. I mean, you literally can't take two steps and not bump into somebody and have some kind of conversation. So, I mean, that's sort of the landscape. But we knew, just going back, because it really begins at the Senior Bowl, and it just keeps building. And so what we saw at the Senior Bowl was a very talented and deep defensive line class. And it got confirmed by the testing, what the guys did, throughout Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, right into the linebackers on Friday. And then we saw a really fast and deep running back class. We thought it was going to be, even with Ashton Genty not testing. He probably wishes he did after what some of the guys did and some of the times that they ran. But I think those are two classes, two groups that we're going to see, an awful lot of names. We're going to get to know the names. But it's a deep defensive line class. It's going to be a defensive draft. And at the very top, like it was last year, offense and quarterbacks, I think this is what we're going to see. And I think it was confirmed by some of the testing that we saw.
Yeah, and Jason, last year, the first edge rusher wasn't taken until the teens, right? I think it was
16.
Correct. So that was the first edge rusher off the board. That won't be the case this year, will it?
No, I mean, some of this injury, surgery, no surgery stuff with Abdul Carter is kind of interesting. And this is why the Combine really exists. It's for what Baldy talked about, the winter meetings, get together, plot your deals. But it's the medical part of this and having different teams sort of, their team doctors working in these pools, looking at these players and sort of look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but talking out some of these medical situations and how much of a red flag certain things are for certain teams. As much as we talk about how they analyze things differently, how front offices operate differently in terms of how they spend their money, allocate their cap, there's definitely differences in teams' willingness to risk things from a health standpoint. Otherwise, I don't know, guys. I think the biggest story of the Combine was Jordan Schultz versus Ian Rappaport. It's kind of a nothing burger. There were agents for quarterbacks trying to push guys up, generating steam for the Louisville kid. There was a Will Howard hype train that was going on up until Will Howard had to step out on the field. Yeah. So there's buyer beware in this quarterback market. At the same time, to the winter meetings part of things, agents who represent some quarterbacks in this draft, as well as quarterbacks on the potential trade or free agent market, were getting the Heisman from teams, like Sam Darnold looking for $40 million. That's not out there. Now, maybe a week from now, 2 weeks from now, it changes and a team caves and then other teams cave. But the sense I was getting from agents for quarterbacks and from people who work for teams that need quarterbacks is there's a recalibration here. And none of these guys are probably getting what they thought they were going to get just out of desperation. Doesn't mean somebody won't change reverse course. But these teams, collusion? I don't know. But they were holding a hard line with this quarterback class. And I think that probably will largely remain the case. And I'm not sure too many of them are going to love the financial package they get. And I just still wonder if Sam Darnold ends up, especially with Matt Stafford staying in LA, if Sam Darnold ends up back in Minnesota, but at the Vikings price and way below a franchise tag and below a transition tag.
Well, to the point about, the winter meetings, I sat in a particular team's box on Friday, and the general manager was never there. He was busy talking to agents.
Yeah.
You're talking about, whether it's the workings for a deal or trades that might come down or free agency. I mean, he's got all his minions doing all the work.
Yes.
That's one thing. Number two, and this is what we never learn. It gets leaked, but we don't really learn it. And that is these interviews. Like I talked to one player that interviewed a position for a team. And one of the players, I'm not going to mention the player's name.
Yeah.
But, he's like, he can't draw. I mean, this is a guy at the top of a position group. He could not draw up a run play from his team.
It's a problem.
Couldn't do it. So that stuff gets out there, and you see how guys drop or whatever. I mean, what we saw, in some of the drills is fine. But the stuff that you hear about, like that stuff spreads quickly when a player mentally just can't do it, and is really limited. And now, not saying he can't be a good player. And the guy that I talked to said, I think he still could be a good player, Baldy. But you're going to have to coach this guy a little bit differently than maybe that we're used to.
It's a great point, Brian. I think when we talk about the intangibles, right, the physical attributes are one thing. We all know, being around this game as long as we have, there is a huge mental aspect, especially at those positions that you're talking about that play in. And a lot of teams, hey, look, if I'm a general manager and my job's on the line, I'm not rolling the dice on that, right? So I got to be very careful. Jason, I want to dive in a little bit further where you were talking about this week, the first domino fell, and you mentioned Matthew Stafford. So, guys, he talks to the Raiders. He talks to the Giants, right? And we knew he wanted a raise. The Rams knew he wanted a raise, right? I'm underpaid, all right? Look at what I'm doing. I need my $50 million. Let's make this happen. And the Rams go, no, you go talk to other teams. And then it plays out where he obviously goes back to the Rams, and we're going to see the financials of that deal here coming out soon enough. But if you're Joe Shane and you're Brian Dable, right, what are you thinking now? Because this was like, hey, we're going to get a chance to get Stafford.
Well,
this is great.
You did have a chance, but you were going to have to blow him out of the water and pay enough of a premium that he's going to leave the comforts of Malibu and a coach who he knows can get him to the playoffs every year and knows how to manage him through a season. And I'm going to go to your rebuild where your protection schemes and your offensive line or whatever I don't know about, and I'm going to have to play outdoors and I'm going to play in the cold. I have to get beat up just to make the playoffs. So, I mean, look, I think they did the right thing. They said, hey, man, you've been all we could have hoped for. We've got some other things we got to deal with. Go out there and see what's out there for you. And if there's a deal to be made, we're open to it. So they did right by him. And ultimately, he came back. And let's face it, he's on a whole nother level than anybody else who's available.
Yes.
And when that guy doesn't leave the nest and doesn't reset the market and doesn't take one of those teams off the board, he stays put. I think, again, to what I was talking about before, it has a chilling effect on the whole market. And a whole bunch of other guys are like, well, what does that mean for Justin Fields? What does that mean for Daniel Jones? Or, what does that mean for Kirk Cousins? Like, yeah. And some of those guys like Cousins, the money is what it is. I mean, he'll be out of there. Carl, you know this. And it's just a matter of how much Atlanta has to eat.
Yep.
And I think if I'm Atlanta right now, I'm like, ooh, we might have to eat. We might have to eat a fair bit of that to get anything back in return.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the quarterback class, guys. It's in the Huddle. Subscribe, like us, tell your friends. Don't miss an episode. In the Huddle pod, you can watch us on YouTube. We talk nothing but ball, and it's going to be a huge offseason as we get to free agency, obviously leading up to the draft and all the moves that these teams make around the league. So, guys, Jackson Dart, I thought helped himself. Okay? I did not think Will Howard, as you alluded to, Jason, helped himself. And part of this is, and I'm going to make this comparison, and I want to get your thoughts, Baldy. So Shedeur Sanders big ego, lots of confidence. I don't know what people think because his father's named Deion Sanders. So it shouldn't make any, it shouldn't be an issue for anybody to say the kid didn't fall too far from the tree. But, the bravado that he provides, and people are like, oh, he's egomaniac, and I don't know, is BS to me. But with that said, Shedeur was sacked 43 times at Colorado. No offensive line, no run game. Kid was
the ball too long.
Yes, but the kid was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He showed you he can play. Will Howard had arguably the best wide receiver in college football, the best offensive line in college football, was sacked 13 times, and you see him just throwing behind guys, leading guys too much. And my point is, as I look at this quarterback class, yes, I do think it's Shedeur and Cam at the top. Jackson Dart helped himself. Guys, what do you think about this class, and who impressed you, if anybody, that maybe stood out that did work out at the combine?
Well, I mean, there's Jaden Daniels isn't in this draft. CJ Stroud is not in this draft. I mean, those two guys came into this league and they elevated everybody around them and they got their teams to the playoffs. I don't believe Shedeur or Cam or Daxon or anybody else in this draft can do that. Now, maybe there's a Brock Purdy out there that we're not talking about. I don't believe that either. I know I saw Brock Purdy play at Iowa State. I remember how highly recruited he was. I know the program he played in. I don't think, and I'm still going through all these guys, but you can't tell me Tyler Schaefer or any of these guys can do what we just witnessed and what Jaden just did. I just don't believe it. And so if you're picking number 1, 2, 3, if you're the Giants, if you're the Jets, you need quarterbacks. If you think one of these guys, and I don't care what their last name is going to come in and elevate your program the way we just saw a moribund Houston team turn around, the way we saw a moribund Washington team turn around, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And I'm actually, I don't really understand Shedeur. Why wouldn't you throw? It's a football. You've been doing it your whole life.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you just go out there and throw? I don't care if you've never met the receiver you're throwing to. Throw a football. Kurt Warner's down there. The whole league is watching. Like, why wouldn't you just show what you could do? I understand. I've just watched BYU game. They were awful against BYU. They dominated the offensive line. Shedeur threw a couple balls to Travis Hunter that looked pretty good. Other than that, it's a waste of time watching it. Like, you can't really decipher anything from that tape, except to Jason's point. He does hold the ball too long.
He does.
So I just see go watch, Miami and Syracuse play and tell me Kyle McCord in that game isn't better than Cam Ward. He is in that game, one game. It's really, really tough to decipher this class and say what guy is going to come in here and really elevate their team right now. I don't see any of these guys doing it.
Well, as we've talked about, sort of the motif to this whole thing is supply and demand, Econ 101, and a quarter of the league needs a quarterback, and we just pretty much crapped on everybody who's available out there right now, right? Like every veteran who's out there, we've pretty much been like, yeah, he ain't going to get what he wants. He shouldn't get what he wants. He's either, his Achilles is either shot or his arm shot or he never panned out. So that's that. I don't know that people are doing cartwheels and backflips over next year's quarterback class. I haven't heard that the way I heard like 3 years ago. I started to hear about last year's quarterback class already. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not hearing that about 2026. So where are they coming from? Like, where? Tom Brady's not coming out of retirement. He owns the Raiders now. Like, so like Andrew Luck, he's done. So they're going to get drafted, and they probably will be overdrafted throughout this draft, but it's your only chance, right? You've got to be able to develop them. You've got to be able to cultivate them. And are they going to be ready to come in game one and change your program? No.
Well, I think one of the things that we saw, and this is not about the quarterback class, but they're like Chuck Noll and his belief in control the tempo and take care of the football goes a long ways. And so, we're going to see more teams lean on the run game like we did this year and to take the ball out of the quarterback's hands. I mean, Jalen Hurts was the Super Bowl MVP, and rightfully so. And he literally averaged 22 passes a game,
Yeah,
over the last 15 games.
Right.
Like, that is what these teams have to sort of rely on, because Jane Daniels coming out, he isn't in this draft. He's not there. CJ Stroud is not in this draft. Like, you've got to help these guys out more so, I think, than ever before. Offensive linemen are at a premium. Running backs are going to go. It's a deep class for running backs. We'll get to it during this course of this lead up to the April 24th in Green Bay. But I believe you got to take a completely different approach than maybe what we have seen. And I think whether it's Baltimore, Philadelphia, Detroit, this is the direction this league is going to right now.
Yeah. And ironically, the team that hasn't been to a Super Bowl in 30 years desperately needs a running back, and they're picking 12. They can get one and do exactly what you're talking about if they fill the void. I mean, like, it makes total sense, Baldy. Let me ask you guys about the best player in this draft, Travis Hunter. Mm-hmm. All week we heard how teams might use him. We've been around this our entire lives. We've never, even Deion didn't play both ways every damn play, okay? Yeah. It's the NFL. And I don't expect Travis Hunter to do that, even though he was touting himself as being able to, I'm willing to do it, blah, blah, blah. So he's going to go top 5 at some point. What do you guys play him as? You play him as a DB? You play him as a wide receiver? And guys, you know this. Wide receivers are making on average about, the top guys, $32 million a year. DB is at about $22 million a year. If I'm Travis Hunter, I'm like, I want to be a wide receiver because I see the daylight, right? I see the end game here. What do you do if you're the team that takes him? What do you do?
Well, I mean, real quick here, I did talk to Deion about this at the Hula Bowl this year in Orlando. And he said the one thing you have to remember now, Baldy, is, and this is quote from Deion, is that, you play at Colorado, Pat Shurmur's system, whatever, or you're playing against a team, there's a play being run every 18 seconds. And so from a fatigue standpoint, it's just hard to do that at the college level, play both ways. But the NFL level, where you could get 40 seconds in between, the game is played at a completely different pace. I believe you can get a whole lot more offensively out of him. I think you start him at corner. That's a premium position in this business right now. He might be the best corner in this draft. It might not even be close, to be honest with you. But you start him at corner, and then you got your third down packages, you got your red zone, you got your 2-minute drill, you got all these other things that you can put them on the field, in your offense, and you can match them up. You can say, okay, this is we need a 2-minute drill. We got to get some plays. I think you can work your offense in with him because he is a dynamic player on offense. But I think looking at it right now, he's my starting corner and he's my playmaker on offense. And we're going to work him into the offense.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's obviously at a whole nother level than, like, I'm thinking back to Troy Brown and how Bill Belichick used Troy Brown and converted him offense, right, to defense and used him defensively in certain packages. I think you probably do the inverse with this kid. He's obviously, you never take him off the field on defense and you start to bleed him in on offense in certain packages when you want to go 4 wide, certain spread, whatever, certain matchups you're fighting for. But there's obviously a unique value in what he can bring to you. And there is a lot, to Baldy's point, there's a lot of standing around in the NFL. And who knows that when they add more games, they might make the commercial breaks even longer. Like, so
yeah,
like you're only this young once. I'll be fascinated to see whose hands he falls into, how enterprising that coach is, how comfortable that coach is in his own skin, how accomplished his staff is, how much his staff gets along. Sometimes Baldy, like, guys don't want to share guys, and I get him in my room. I don't want to let him out of my room to go into your room for that. Like, so how established is the staff? What's the working relationships like? But this is a special football player.
The good problem with Travis, and I've gotten this from Warren Sapp. I've gotten this from a lot of guys in Colorado. This guy loves football.
Yes, he does.
Like, he loves it. And so from that standpoint, you're going to get, I think, a deep commitment. I think he wants to show you that he might be the first going back to maybe Charles Woodson, like this guy can really go both ways. And I think he might want to be that pioneer where, Deion he got the return game, he got the defense. He, offensively helped out a little bit, but I think this guy has a chance to be a true pioneer of what football can be, going back to, Concrete Charlie maybe, but like this guy has a chance to really, really define what two-way position looks like, and he's got the right mindset to do it.
Shohei Ohtani.
Okay, there you go. Nice job, Jason.
Yeah. Well, if he's that, then he's very special. If he's that in the NFL, then he's very special. I'll say this, Baldy, to your point. Kid's from here. He's from Atlanta, the Atlanta area.
Yeah.
Loves two things: football and fishing. He's not going to be in the streets. He's not going to be hanging out. He's not going to be doing dumb shit. I'm just telling you that's what the kid loves. Whoever gets him is getting that guy that's totally committed to football. And I mean, all this other stuff, this peripheral, all this stuff around him, he really doesn't even care about. Like, even the NIL stuff, he wasn't even like, okay, it's cool, but like, that's not what he cares about. And I think this. Those guys, the Brock Bowers of the world that just, I'm right here.
Yeah.
They come in and they make a difference, man. And I think that's what Travis Hunter's going to do. It's in the huddle, guys. Let's talk about Tee Higgins. He was, I guess, PO. Jason, did you see the tweet?
Yeah, he's pissed.
He's like,
he should have been a free agent 2 years ago, and this artificial mechanism of the CBA keeps his ass off the market, and he's stuck with Mike Brown for another year.
He says, tag on Twitter yesterday, and I hit him back and said, look, this is the only way this is happening. They can't pay you and Jamar, so look, hopefully you get your long-term deal. But fellas, how does this shake out? And what does it also mean for Trey Hendrickson if you're going to tag T, pay Jamar? How are you paying Trey? Baldy, can they do it?
No, I don't think they can. Not paying Joe and not paying what they were going to end up paying Jamar. He's the best receiver in football. Everybody else who's had the best receiver has figured out how to pay him. All right, I don't care, if it was Cooper Kupp back in the day or Justin Jefferson, they figured out how to pay him. But now you got Joe Burrow making top of the line, and he's willing to restructure contract from, you hear to whatever level that can help. But I don't know if they can work in Trey. Like, he's leading the league in sacks. He's, it's 4 straight great years in a row for him. I mean, those guys, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, they're at a premium. Like, they've got 4 guys at a premium. I don't know that they can afford all of it and pay all the other guys that they got to pay. And so I don't know that I don't know that they have enough creativity in their building to figure it out. I'm not knocking Cincinnati, but it's just some teams do and some teams can't. Dallas is one of those teams doesn't seem to be able to figure it out. Cincinnati seems to be one of those teams. They don't know how to figure it out. And so T is, he's in a situation where if he's on the market, he probably gets top dollar. He becomes a number 1 receiver in one place or another. It's just
they all could do it. They all could do it. They all make so much. They all could keep anybody they want to keep, but the salary cap is a great thing for them to hide behind, a soft salary cap that's malleable, that allows them to create this mystique and aura of so much hand wringing. But I mean, you could go $100 million over the cap if you want to, and it doesn't take genius to do it. I mean, I think last year the Eagles had 8 guys making over $21 million a year. They had 11 guys making over $15 million a year. You could do it if you want to do it. I don't think Mike Brown is going to do it. He's going to have $60 million plus tied up in 2 receivers and a $55 million quarterback. I think he's going to have to trade Trey Hendrickson. I think he needs draft picks, and he's going to try to rebuild his defense. I guess they're going to draft nothing but defense. I mean, he also still needs offensive linemen.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a way to do business. Like, you could have got Tee Higgins at the end of year 3 for way less, before the wide receiver market started going bonkers. Like, now you're going to rent him for 27. And if you're Higgins, what are they going to offer me that's going to keep me from just playing out the tag again? Because I'm going to jump Jamar Chase next year on the open market.
Well, I was at Cincinnati's training camp last year twice. And I mean, it might come down to this again, but like, there's Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase playing catch on the side while practice is going on. I mean, they didn't participate. Jamar's trying to get a contract. T wasn't happy. And, like, they didn't participate. Like, now Jamar went out there and balled out. So training camp is training camp. But you might see something similar.
But they stunk in September again, Baldy, like they always do. And they're always chasing out of their own hole. And I think some of that is because the culture there and the locker room and guys having to fight for their money and, like, right? Yeah. I mean, they lost to Jacoby Brissett and the New England Patriots week 1.
They did. And that was a big one. Right. It hurt them.
Yeah,
kept them out of the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right, Jason.
Here's what's interesting, guys. So our producer is named Spencer. He's behind the scenes. He says to us, the Eagles paid everybody, and Jason alluded to this, but I want to be clear. So the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and yes, they paid A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But the Dolphins have done the same thing, guys, and they've yet to win a playoff game under the model of having 2 wideouts that are making this kind of money. So when you talk about getting up into the $30 million range, and you've got 2 guys that are doing that, Hill and Waddle, yeah, but no playoff wins. The Eagles are a different team because of the way they're constructed.
Yes.
You can't just look at the Eagles and go, well, they did it and everybody else can be good. There's a ton of teams, guys, that are paying their wide receivers $20 million each. But even those teams are combined for 1 playoff win. We're talking about 49ers with Ayuk and Samuel, Bears with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs. All these guys are getting paid. No playoff wins. So I don't know if that's the formula.
Well, the formula is you are deep and strong in the trenches. And that's what the Eagles do. So we look at the salaries of the receivers, the running back, the quarterback, but none of that works if the offensive line isn't outstanding. And they've got the best offensive line in football. Same thing in Detroit. I mean, you can pay Amon-Ra St. Brown and you can pay Jared Goff, and but honestly, without their offensive line, none of that stuff matters. And so if I'm constructing a team, and this is not to belittle any wide receiver, I want everybody to get whatever they can. But if your offensive line isn't fixed the way Miami's is not fixed and has not been fixed, and you just continue to pay players that continue to get hurt, and you just are always dealing with depth issues, then it doesn't really matter that you pay Tyreek or you pay, Waddle or you pay Tua. Until that gets fixed up front, then they're probably not going to win many playoff games. Look at Buffalo. Buffalo has the top 3 offensive line. They started basically all 5 guys for all 18, 19 games they played this year. We don't even know they just paid Shakir yesterday. But honestly, they didn't really care that they lost Diggs or they lost, whoever. They're built in the trenches. And that's why Josh Allen's successful. And that's why whoever they throw to becomes the guy in that particular game.
Jason, look, money doesn't always buy you love, and I want to make sure my numbers are accurate. So I'm grabbing my notes here about the Eagles. But only the Browns had more money committed to payroll last year, excuse me, than the Eagles. You can spend, again, like I said, 80, 100 million over that soft cap if you want to. And last year, the Eagles led the NFL. 5 players with $21 million or more in cash earned in 2024. 9 guys with 15 million or more. 11 players with 10 million or more in cash paid to them last year. But
Jason, look, they struck gold with Zach Bond in free agency.
Yes,
on a 1-year deal. They drafted Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, and all they did is develop into bona fide star players. They've got Milton Williams on the back end of a rookie contract. Josh Sweat is a guy that, just had a great season. I mean, they've drafted well. They drafted 2 rookies in the secondary, not to mention what they did with Reed Blankenship the year before. I mean, they drafted well. It's a combination. They built
with your margins help when you can when you can pay Bryce Huff $17 million and he can't crack your roster.
But
he's one of the 9 who made 15 million or more in cash last year.
No, but Vic Fangio's Vic's he doesn't fit my defense.
Yeah.
I'll give you 6 weeks. It didn't work out. He's a pass rush specialist. That guy can't play on the field with me. So we'll eat that mistake and we'll just develop Nolan Smith. And you know what? Jalen Hunt, 3rd round pick out of whatever school that is in Houston. We'll play him and we'll develop him. So, they're always forward thinking to the point about this thing all started with Cincinnati. Like the Eagles are forward thinking. So they lock guys up. Going back to Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, they lock these guys up. They don't ever let them hit the market.
Yeah.
We're like, we like the way these guys play. They're part of our fabric. We're not letting them go. They're Eagles.
One other thing we want to hit on, and that was the Deebo Samuel trade. So the 49ers, look, I guess he's been asking for a trade for a year, right? I mean, we kind of knew this, but they executed, and it's gonna happen. He's going to the Commanders, which I think is a good move for the Commanders. It helps them, and they only gave up a 5th-round pick. How does this help the 49ers? If it does, because, again, you're taking away one of their major playmakers.
Well, you can't continue to pay everybody the way they have, whether it was – Nick Bosa, whether it's Trent Williams, whether it's McCaffrey. You can't continue to pay everybody at the top of the food chain and then pay your quarterback. So I talked to Jed York, the president, back in October about Brock Purdy. And they knew in October they're going to pay Brock Purdy, whatever the freight is, 55, 60 million, whatever it is. So if you're going to do that, you've got to shed salary. And so Deebo was not a productive player for them last year. And you can say he's a declining player, because that's what all the stats say and all the analytics say. He's a declining player. But Adam George knows him as well as anybody. He helped draft him in San Francisco. So let's see what Cliff Kingsbury can do with Deebo in this offense right now. McLaurin's their number one guy. They probably can't keep Diami Brown, who really came on and looked like a really ascending player the last 5-6 weeks of the season. But, that's where they're at right now. They did San Francisco the biggest favor they could.
Hey, to be able to get anything back in return for that contract and not have to eat salary is a massive win for Jed York and Prague and those guys. Look, their culture was off. I talked to a lot of people who were out there all spring and summer. Yeah, there's the Super Bowl hangover, but there was a lot of guys who didn't feel like they were getting enough respect, who felt like they had to go to war too much with the front office for an extra penny here, an extra penny there. They felt like certain guys were afforded privileges, but I got to go in there and be a battering ram for my money every week. So, it was off. It played out the whole season, and Deebo was one of those guys. And Deebo's body, I think, is all – running backs go fast, right? Like, when it goes, it goes. They use this guy like a battering ram. He was a running back. I mean, he was playing between the tackles, between the slot, between the hash marks, and then running between the tackles. This dude was asked to do a lot for a team that kept playing extra games in the playoffs every year. So I hope Washington is looking at this as a cherry on top and not a main thing. From a price tag standpoint, it's going to feel like a main thing.
Yeah.
But what is Deebo going to be in January? Like, I don't know. How are you going to manage him through the year? Like,
he just doesn't look
there's
like
nothing
a
explosive
difference maker right now.
No, he did in 2021, but not anymore.
But I mean, if you've got this incredible talent at quarterback. All right, McLaurin breaks out, but he's different. I mean, he's got top end speed, great route runner, great individual, and smart as hell. You got Zach Ertz at the end, but he's still effective for what they're asking him to do. I mean, to me, if I'm Washington, just go to the draft, get young, get fresh legs, get guys that can be on the field every day, practicing, working with your quarterback, going to the off season, going down to, wherever, Louisiana, wherever, and go work out. Like to me, that's what you want to do. San Francisco's happy as hell. They, honestly, if they can unload Ayuk right now, somehow, I don't think they can, but if they could do it, they would do it. They're like, okay, we just drafted a kid in the first round. We got some other guys. We got a tight end. Let's get McCaffrey healthy. Let's go to the draft and find another receiver. Like that's really what you need to do.
Yeah, totally agree. Fellas, we got so much to get to here over the next few weeks. We'll be talking about the start of the league year, March 12th. Free agency starts. We'll see what teams dive in and immediately try to make some impact there. And then obviously the quarterback dominoes, as we'll see where some of these free agents are going to end up. It's going to be interesting, guys. Big offseason and we got it all covered for you right here on In the Huddle. Make sure you follow Brian Baldinger. Check out his breakdowns. He'll be doing a lot of that stuff, getting ready for the draft.
We got free agency coming up next week, man.
It's big.
I mean, the league year's like it's here.
It's
new
big.
League year start next week, guys.
Jason, follow him and read him in the Washington Post, guys. Follow us across all social media platforms and stay up on everything that's going on around the NFL. Thanks for being here. We're back at you next week. We got plenty more to get to. It's In the Huddle.